What's up, YouTube? It's your boy JP's on the keys, and it's too easy to the video today. And a lot of you liked my reaction to the first Crusade, like the part one. So you know what I'm saying, we got to finish the series. You know, I always like learning things that you weren't like. It's always good learning on your own. You feel what I mean? Like learning just information that can help you see people differently. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like the best way to me to eliminate prejudice and racism and all this stuff is to like education. Education is probably the best, because when a lot of people make just like stereotypical statements, and a lot of people just make judgments without knowing a person, it's because most likely it's because they lack knowledge. I mean, it could be just because they're a hateful person, they're just a racist, but most times it's because they lack knowledge. They're just ignorant on the history of. They're ignorant on what that person represents. They're just like going off some type of thing that was made of. Oh, these people are this, those people are that. Like, and they're not willing to learn what those people have went through. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I had any predisposed judgments or anything. I'm just saying it's always good to learn about other things besides what you've been conditioned to learn about, besides what the public school system teaches you, because the public school system not really teach you that much. All they teach you to do is go to work, and to be in debt, because there's no financial literacy education in the American school system unless you look for it yourself. But anyway, thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Let's watch this, bro.
October 1097. 2 years had passed since Pope Urban II preached a crusade to help the Byzantine Empire in its war against the Seljuk Turks. Now the first crusade had reached the great city of Antioch. It was the last major Turkish stronghold, standing between the crusade and its goal, the holy city of Jerusalem. But Antioch was virtually impregnable, with its citadel atop a 1,000-foot mountain and too large to encircle. The giant Crusader army could only camp outside its walls and pray for a miracle.
Yo, so they have an establishment on top of a mountain. Talk about using your environment. They say y'all not coming up here. And the thing you have a vantage point out for miles, because that's on top of a mountain. Because you're at an elevated viewpoint. So now you can see for miles. Like, okay, you can see like this, but if you put me higher up, I can see even farther. Like, the tactical strategies are just so like fascinating to see. Like, people use these tactics. Like just seeing this hearing this stuff is like, it's cool, because I can visualize stuff like this back then. Like, they had a settlement on top of a mountain with impregnable walls that you couldn't go through, and it stretched for miles, so you couldn't even encircle it.
But that winter, they ran out of food. Horses, men, and camp followers began to starve. A trickle of supplies continued to arrive by sea, mostly from the Byzantine-controlled island of Cyprus, and they defeated an attempt by Radwan of Aleppo to break the siege at the Battle of Lake Antioch. But the Crusaders' situation seemed hopeless. Morale fell, as deaths and desertions rose steadily. In March, a Crusader fleet arrived with much-needed reinforcements and supplies. Finally, one night, Bohemond of Taranto and 60 of his men scaled a tower on the southern wall, whose commander had been bribed.
What? What? So you got So we're in the middle of probably one of the biggest religious wars in human history. And you're telling me that a Muslim Turk can be bribed by Christians. In this time, during a point where the two religions are at odds, where if a Muslim sees a Christian or vice versa, like it's on sight, like it's gonna be bloodshed. That's crazy. Like now, especially, it's a lot more. I would have figured there would have been a lot more religious intolerance back then. You know what I'm saying? It's definitely not freedom of religion back then in this time. You know what I'm saying? Definitely not. I mean, you could practice it, but you probably were going to be looked at in a weird way, But that's really crazy though. I think they were actually able to bribe somebody from inside the tower. That was the only way they were going to get in anyway.
As dawn broke, Bohemond's men opened the city gates, and the Crusader army poured in. They massacred soldiers and civilians alike, while desperate Muslim survivors fled to the citadel, which continued to resist all attacks. Antioch had fallen, but now a giant Turkish army was assembled under the command of Khur-Buga, governor of Mosul.
That's crazy how one dude, the commander, caused the deaths of thousands of soldiers and civilians just by being untrue, just by being corrupt, caused the deaths of so many and the fall of the entire empire, the fall of an entire fortress because of your greed. Shaking my head.
First, he attacked Baldwin in Edessa, but abandoned his siege after 3 weeks and marched on Antioch. The Crusader army was exhausted, starving, and now trapped. They could expect no help from the Byzantines. Emperor Alexius, busy securing his own territory in Anatolia, had received false reports that the crusade had already been destroyed. Fearing a Turkish counterattack, he withdrew to Constantinople. Then, inside Antioch, a relic was miraculously discovered. Supposedly the Holy Lance thrust into Christ's side at his crucifixion. And the Crusaders' faith in their holy mission was renewed. Although heavily outnumbered, the Crusaders decided to meet the Muslim army outside the city walls. With the zeal of religious fanatics, seeing visions of saints and angels, they charged the Muslim army.
Charge in the name of Jesus!
Which turned and fled. Khur-Buga, accusing his commanders of treachery, possibly correctly, set fire to his camp and withdrew. The Muslim defenders in the citadel, witnessing this stunning victory, quickly surrendered.
Jerusalem, my guy.
In summer 1098, Fatimid forces from Egypt captured Jerusalem from the Artukid Turks. Al-Afdal, Grand Vizier or Chief Minister of Egypt, saw the Seljuk Turks as his greatest enemy, and even tried to make an alliance with the Crusaders against them. But the Crusaders were not interested. Instead, they spent 5 months around Antioch, foraging supplies and arguing among themselves. Stephen of Blois and Hugh of Vermandois had already given up and returned home. Now Bohemond of Taranto claimed the former Byzantine city of Antioch for himself, breaking his oath to Emperor Alexius to return such territories to him. Bohemond argued that the emperor had broken the oath first, by failing to help the Crusaders during the siege.
He does have a point. He does have a point, though. Even though, based on what is said, it wasn't his fault. But I still understand why he would think, oh, he didn't even send in a force to help us. So the treaty that you have is broken. Like I completely understand why he would think that way.
Divisions deepened after Bishop Adhemar of Le Puy died from illness. He'd been the Crusade's spiritual leader and a unifying presence on their council. Meanwhile, Crusaders carried out a brutal massacre of civilians at Ma'arat al-Numan. Pressure from the mass of ordinary Crusaders forced their leaders to put aside their differences and march south towards Jerusalem.
See, that's the puzzle. That's the confusing point. Like I certainly understand how you feel as if you need to fight for your religion. I understand that completely. But the fact is, murdering innocent civilians because they do not belong to the same religious group to you, even though they present no threat to you or your religion, is kind of backwards. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of contradictory to the whole fighting for religion. You know what I mean? That's very contradictory. And it's just like that's where I've never really felt like in favor of wars for that reason. If you're gonna have a war, then you target the people who are actively trying to kill you. You don't target civilians who are not doing anything, who are not even proposing any threat to you. They're just there. You're just doing it because you're bored and you just want to. That's a form of dominance. Hey, even though these people can't fight, even though they're not military trained, even though they're not going to fight me back, let me just kill them anyway, just so I can have some power over these minions.
Except for Bohemond, who remained in Antioch, where he declared himself prince. As the Crusaders entered Fatimid territory, many local rulers offered up money and supplies to avoid violence.
But we can also say most of them really didn't know who was who. You didn't really know who was, maybe they might have been, it could have been spies within the group. You never know who was who. But you can, you know what I'm saying? It's a double-edged sword when you really think about it. Because you never know who could be like an informant or who can be a spy. There could be spies within your camp. You never know. You know what I'm saying? Like I said before, it's a double-edged sword.
Other villages had been abandoned. As the Crusaders neared Jerusalem, they found wells poisoned, trees cut down, and animals driven away. Anything that could help the Crusaders had been destroyed. On the 7th of June 1099, the Crusaders got their first sight of Jerusalem. Many fell to their knees and wept with joy. But they faced a serious challenge. They were now reduced to about 12,000 fighting men, not enough to encircle the city, and they were running out of food and water. Jerusalem would have to be taken by storm.
Let's go.
The barren landscape and...
Can we just admire how fire this... Can we admire how fire this 3D design is? This is fire. Shut up, yo, man. This is hard. I like this. The presentation on these is really good. I like the presentation.
The Crusaders had no timber to build siege engines, and on the 13th of June, their first assault with a single scaling ladder was easily repulsed. 4 days later, 6 Genoese galleys arrived at Jaffa, where they were soon blockaded by the powerful Fatimid fleet. So the sailors took apart their ships and carried the timber to the siege at Jerusalem.
What?
The Crusaders foraged more wood from the surrounding land, enough to build 2 siege towers. These mobile wooden structures would be wheeled up to the outer wall and allow the Crusaders to directly assault the enemy battlements. One tower was stationed with Raymond of Toulouse's forces in the southwest. The other was with Godfrey of Bouillon's troops to the north. On the 8th of July, seeking God's aid in the impending assault, the entire crusade walked in procession around the city, finishing with a religious service on the Mount of Olives.
Like, just think about that. Just think about that from both sides. I know people from Jerusalem actually see this. They see this going on. I know they do. Like, you just see a group of people just walking around the city, and you know that they're probably going to try to kill you. And the same thing with the Christians marching. Like, you're marching around the city, you're feeling good because, you know what I'm saying, you've reached your destination, you've reached the Holy Land. Now you're hyped up. You're hyped up, and you're hyped up like, yeah, we can take the Holy Land and we can claim it as ours, as it's truthfully supposed to be. And then you never think that you might die. But then people didn't care, because that was, the religion was probably one of the biggest parts of culture for a long time. Like, religion was huge back then. Like, when people didn't have anything, they had religion. Like, religion was religion is still important in a lot of people's lives. I'm talking about, it's not as stressed culturally as it was back then, though.
On the night before the attack, Godfrey suddenly moved his siege tower to a less well-defended section of the city walls.
Smart.
The final assault began on the 15th of July, 1099. In the north, Godfrey of Bouillon's troops managed to fight their way across from their tower onto the city walls, establishing a bridgehead. Soon, they were inside the city, and overcome with religious euphoria and pure bloodlust, they went on the rampage, butchering soldiers and civilians, Jews and Muslims, women and children. It was an orgy of shocking, prolonged slaughter, barbaric, but not unique for the age. The First Crusade had secured its goal in the face of overwhelming odds. And just 4 weeks later, at the Battle of Ascalon, the Crusaders smashed a Fatimid relief army sent to recapture Jerusalem. Most Crusaders, their vows fulfilled, soon returned home to Europe. Only around 300 knights remained to defend Jerusalem under Godfrey of Bouillon, now named Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. The man who'd set these great events in motion, Pope Urban II, did not live to hear the news that Jerusalem had been taken. He died just 2 weeks after the city's fall. The new Crusader states that emerged, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Edessa, lived on precariously, surrounded by enemies. And the Muslim world would not remain so catastrophically divided for long. Soon it would unleash its own holy war against the Crusader states, turning the Holy Land into a battleground for almost 2 centuries. In response, more crusades would be launched from Europe, but none would ever match the bloody, spectacular success of the First Crusade. Research.
That's crazy though. This happened, and crazy. This happened like almost 1,000 years ago too. So but like, just thinking about that, just the fact that how far people were going to go in order to defend their religion was just like, they'll go in the city and just slaughter thousands of people if it meant liberation for them and their religious cause. I understand fighting for your religion, but I don't. What I don't understand is oppressing others who have nothing to do with your struggle, with your supposed struggle. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing with me. I don't understand the killing of civilians. I don't. I can't. I'll never justify it. If you do, that's you. Even though I feel like that's really, you're heinous and you're a sicko. You're a psycho. If you really endorse it, you're a psycho. But anyway, thank you again for the support on this series. Like, the first episode did good. Hopefully the second episode does just as good. Thank you for your support again. Shout out to Epic History TV, because they always have the bangers. I see a lot of other history channels, Kings and Generals, the History Mark, Armchair Historian. We will definitely get to those in the future. Please remember that I'm giving credit to everybody I do. You know what I'm saying? This is not me trying to just finesse people's content for my own views, bro. This is not what it is. Shout out to Epic History. Shout out to everybody who was behind this project. Shout out to everybody. Like, just please don't get that idea that I'm trying to steal people's money or steal people's views, or I'm trying to finesse people's content. I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm just here to add on what I feel is necessary. That's all. Thank you. Please be safe. Please have a great day. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, shout out to Epic History. Don't forget to turn on my post notifications so you don't miss a video. Anyways, I'm out. Peace.